Love is the most beautiful force in the world. But what happens when it meets darkness? In this video, we delve into 5 haunting tales where romance collides with the macabre. Stories of forbidden love, cursed gifts, and undying passion that lingers beyond the grave. A blend of longing, fear, and the unknown awaits. Dare to uncover the shadowy side of love?
They thought it would be romantic. Abby and Jake, a young couple looking for a unique Valentine's Day date, stumbled upon an old, abandoned mansion deep in the woods. The place was infamous, a crumbling estate surrounded by whispers of ghost stories and tragedies. Locals avoided it, but to Abby, it sounded like the perfect adventure. Something different, something memorable. "Come on, Jake," Abby teased as they parked near the overgrown driveway. "What's more romantic than a spooky love story?" Jake forced a grin, but his eyes lingered on the shadowy silhouette of the mansion, its jagged roof peeking through the gnarled trees. Something about the air felt wrong, heavy. The couple stepped inside, the wooden floor groaning beneath their weight. The air was thick with decay, a mixture of mold, dust, and something else, something metallic and sour. Abby's flashlight illuminated faded wallpaper and shattered chandeliers. "It's beautiful in a creepy way," she whispered, her voice bouncing off the empty walls. Jake didn't respond. His focus was drawn to something in the corner of the room, a large, gilded mirror, its glass cracked but still reflecting the room. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching them. As the couple explored, they found themselves drawn to the grand ballroom. Its arched ceilings and dusty velvet curtains gave the space a haunting elegance. But what really caught their attention was the table in the center of the room. It was set. Pristine white linens, golden candelabras, and plates arranged as if expecting guests. The silverware gleamed, untouched by time. "Jake, did someone do this recently?" Abby's voice trembled as she reached for a glass goblet. Before he could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway behind them. Jake spun around, his flashlight darting across the room, but it caught nothing but shadows. "Hello," he called out, his voice shaky. No reply, just the soft creak of floorboards growing louder, closer, and then music. A haunting melody drifted through the air, the sound of a distant piano filling the ballroom. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, more deliberate. The couple turned to see the room transform before their eyes. The dust vanished, the curtains straightened, candles flickered to life, bathing the ballroom in a warm, golden glow. And the guests arrived. The ghostly figures floated into the room, taking their places at the table. They moved without speaking, their hollow faces locked in eerie, permanent smiles. Abby and Jake froze, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. "Jake, we need to leave. Now," Abby whispered, tugging at his arm. But Jake didn't move. His eyes were wide, fixed on the figure at the head of the table. It was a woman, her gown soaked in what looked like blood, her hands clasping a goblet filled with a dark, viscous liquid. She raised it in a toast, her hollow eyes locking onto Jake's. Suddenly the doors slammed shut. The music swelled and the figures began to dance. They moved in stiff, jerking motions, twirling and swaying as if controlled by invisible strings. Jake and Abby tried to run, but the floor beneath them shifted, rippling like liquid. They were trapped, surrounded by the swirling apparitions. "Join us!" a voice hissed, low and guttural, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Abby screamed as ghostly hands reached for her, their icy touch freezing her in place. Jake lunged to protect her, but the ghostly woman from the head of the table appeared before him, her face inches from his. Love is eternal, she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. The next morning, the townsfolk found the mansion exactly as it had always been, silent, decaying, empty. But if you wander too close on Valentine's night, you might hear it. The faint sound of music, the soft laughter of ghostly guests, and the whispers of 2 new voices among them. Abby and Jake never left the party. Claire had always believed in love. To her, it was the thread that bound the world together, the force that gave life meaning. But love, for Claire, had become a cruel, unyielding torment. She had fallen deeply, hopelessly for Ethan, a man whose heart was never hers to claim. Ethan, charming and kind, had always seen Claire as a friend. He valued her companionship, confided in her, and often relied on her for advice. But for Claire, every shared laugh, every casual touch, carried a weight that Ethan could never understand. When Valentine's Day approached, Claire could no longer keep her feelings hidden. She planned everything meticulously: a quiet evening dinner, candles flickering, the perfect opportunity to tell Ethan how she felt. But when she confessed her love, Ethan's gentle rejection shattered her world. "I'm sorry, Claire," he had said, his voice kind but firm. "You're an amazing person, but I don't feel that way about you. I don't want to hurt you." Those words echoed in Claire's mind long after Ethan left that evening. She sat alone at the table, staring at the remnants of what was supposed to be their romantic dinner. The candles burned low, the air growing colder with every passing minute. But Claire refused to accept that this was the end. Love wasn't supposed to end in heartbreak. It was supposed to conquer all. As the days passed, her thoughts darkened, spiraling into an obsession. She began to research ways to fix what had gone wrong, delving into ancient rituals and forbidden practices that promised to reunite lost lovers. On Valentine's Eve, Claire completed the ritual. She painted a sigil on the floor of her apartment, the symbol pulsing faintly as though alive. She whispered incantations in the dead of night, calling out to forces she couldn't comprehend. She believed, with all her heart, that this would bring Ethan back to her, not just as her friend, but as her soulmate. The next evening, she invited Ethan over. Her voice on the phone was calm, even apologetic. Ethan, though hesitant, agreed. He hoped that time had allowed her to move on. When he arrived, the air in Claire's apartment felt heavy, suffocating. Candles lit the room, their flickering flames casting distorted shadows on the walls. Ethan noticed the symbols on the floor, the faint metallic smell that hung in the air. What is all this?" he asked, his voice uneasy. Claire turned to him, her face illuminated by the candlelight. "It's for us," she said softly. "To fix everything, to make you see how much I love you." Ethan took a step back. "Claire, this isn't right. I think I should..." Before he could finish, Claire's expression shifted. In a sudden burst of energy, she grabbed his arm, her grip unnaturally strong. "No!" she cried. "You're not leaving me again." "Claire, stop! Let me go!" Ethan pleaded, his voice rising in panic. But Claire held on, her voice breaking as she screamed, "I can't lose you, Ethan, I won't!" The room seemed to pulse with a dark energy, the sigil glowing brighter with every moment. Ethan struggled to pull away, knocking over a vase in the chaos. He stumbled, falling onto the sigil. Claire loomed over him, her hands trembling as she clutched something from the table, a relic she had used in the ritual. Ethan's voice softened, pleading one last time. "Claire, please." And then, silence. For a moment, Claire stared at Ethan's still form, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. She dropped the relic, falling to her knees beside him. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It was supposed to be for us." But the sigil had other plans. Its glow grew brighter, casting an eerie light across the room. The air grew thick, charged with an unnatural energy. Ethan's chest rose. Claire gasped, scrambling backward as his body twitched unnaturally. His eyes snapped open, but they weren't his eyes anymore. They were clouded, distant, filled with something dark and unholy.
"Claire,"
Ethan rasped, his voice distorted, echoing with a chilling timbre.
"you wanted love, now you have it."
Claire's scream caught in her throat as Ethan reached for her, his movements jerky, inhuman. The room was consumed by flickering shadows as the sigil's glow became blinding, and then darkness. For newlyweds Emily and Mark, their honeymoon was meant to be the beginning of a lifetime of love. They chose a secluded mountain resort, far from the hustle and bustle of city life, a place where they could revel in their happiness, uninterrupted. The resort was picturesque, perched on the edge of a glistening lake and surrounded by dense woods that seemed to stretch endlessly. The staff greeted them with warm smiles, and their cabin, tucked away in a quiet corner of the property, felt like a sanctuary. On their first evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Emily and Mark shared a toast by the fireplace. The cabin was cozy, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. But as the night deepened, an odd unease settled over Emily. She couldn't place it. A faint sound outside the window, a shadow flickering in the corner of her vision. But Mark dismissed her concerns with a reassuring smile. "It's just the woods," he said. "Nothing to worry about." But the next morning, Emily's unease grew. At breakfast in the main lodge, she noticed something peculiar. One of the couples they had seen the day before was missing. She distinctly remembered the couple sitting by the lake, their laughter carrying on the breeze. But now, their cabin appeared empty. When Emily asked one of the staff members about them, she was met with a vague, almost dismissive response. "They checked out early," the woman said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. That evening, as they strolled along the lake, Emily mentioned her concern to Mark. "Doesn't it seem strange?" she asked. "Why would someone leave in the middle of their vacation?" Mark shrugged. "Maybe they had an emergency. Let's not overthink it." But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The following day, another couple vanished. Their cabin, too, was suddenly empty. This time, Emily was certain something sinister was happening. She overheard fragments of hushed conversations between staff members, their voices tense. Mark tried to calm her nerves, but even he couldn't ignore the growing tension. The once welcoming resort now felt oppressive, the friendly smiles of the staff taking on an unsettling edge. That night, Emily woke to a strange noise, a faint scraping sound like nails dragging across wood. She nudged Mark awake. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Mark listened, his face growing pale. The sound was coming from the front door. Quietly, he got out of bed and grabbed the fire poker from the hearth. Emily followed close behind as he crept toward the door. The scraping stopped. Mark flung the door open, but there was nothing there, just the cold night air and the faint rustle of the trees. "See? It's nothing," he said, though his voice betrayed his unease. The next morning, the resort felt emptier than ever. More cabins were vacant, the lodge eerily quiet. When Emily and Mark tried to ask the remaining staff about what was happening, they were met with nervous glances and vague answers. By nightfall, they decided to leave. "Let's just pack up and go," Emily urged. "Something isn't right here." But as they prepared to leave, the power in their cabin went out. The darkness was suffocating, the silence broken only by the sound of footsteps outside. Emily's heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, closer. Mark grabbed the fire poker again, positioning himself between Emily and the door. When the door burst open, it wasn't an intruder, but one of the staff members, her face pale and desperate. "You have to leave," she whispered. "They're coming for you." "Who's coming?" Mark demanded. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she handed them a set of keys. "Take my car. Get out, now." Emily and Mark didn't wait to ask questions. They fled into the night, the woman's cryptic warning echoing in their minds. As they drove away, Emily glanced back at the resort. In the rearview mirror, she saw figures emerging from the woods, dozens of them, their movements jerky and unnatural. They never spoke of what happened at the resort again. But every Valentine's Day, Emily couldn't help but wonder, what would have happened if they hadn't escaped? And who or what had been waiting for them in the dark? Every Valentine's Day, Aaron made it a point to surprise his girlfriend Lily with a thoughtful gift. It was a tradition that began when they started dating, and he prided himself on choosing something unique each year. But this time, Aaron wanted to outdo himself. On the morning of February 14th, Aaron strolled into an antique shop tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city. The shop smelled of dust and time, with shelves crammed full of trinkets, relics, and artifacts from decades long past. A glass display case near the back caught his eye, and in it sat a small, ornate music box. The box was exquisite, crafted from dark mahogany and inlaid with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. A tiny, heart-shaped key protruded from its side. "It's perfect," Aaron said to himself, imagining Lily's face lighting up as she opened it. The shopkeeper, a frail man with a thin voice, shuffled over. "That piece has a unique history," he said hesitantly. "Are you sure it's what you want?" Aaron nodded, brushing off the old man's warning as sales tactics. He paid for the box and left, the music box nestled carefully in a velvet pouch. That evening, Aaron presented the gift to Lily over a candlelit dinner. She was delighted by the thoughtful gesture and admired the intricate craftsmanship of the music box. "Does it play?" she asked, turning the little heart-shaped key. As the key wound tighter, the box came to life. A haunting melody spilled out, soft and delicate, yet somehow unsettling. The tune wrapped around the room like a whisper, sending an inexplicable shiver down Lily's spine. "That's beautiful," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. Aaron smiled, pleased with her reaction. Happy Valentine's Day. But as the night wore on, Lily began to feel uneasy. The melody from the music box lingered in her mind, playing on a loop even when the box wasn't open. She dismissed it as a trick of memory and exhaustion, but as she lay in bed, the faint sound of the tune seemed to creep through the walls. The next day, Lily placed the music box on her dresser. She couldn't bring herself to open it again, but no matter where she was in the apartment, she swore she could hear its haunting melody. That evening, Aaron noticed her growing unease. "What's wrong?" he asked. "It's the music box," Lily admitted. "It's strange. I feel like it's always playing, even when it's closed." Aaron laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "It's just a music box. You're letting your imagination run wild." But Lily wasn't convinced. That night, the melody grew louder, and strange things began to happen. Lights flickered, shadows danced in the corners of the room, and a chilling sense of being watched settled over them. The breaking point came when Lily woke to find the music box open on her nightstand, despite having closed it herself before going to bed. The melody was playing softly, and as she stared at the box, she swore she saw something move within the reflection of its silver inlay. Terrified, she shook Aaron awake. "We need to get rid of it," she pleaded. Aaron reluctantly agreed. The next morning, they took the music box back to the antique shop. But when they arrived, the shop was boarded up as if it hadn't been open in years. Desperate, Aaron decided to throw the box into the river. He hurled it into the water with all his strength, watching it sink beneath the surface. For a moment, they felt relief. But that night, the haunting melody returned, louder than ever. When Aaron and Lily searched the apartment, they found the music box sitting on the coffee table, perfectly dry, the heart-shaped key slowly turning on its own. Aaron stared in disbelief as Lily whispered, "What have you brought into our lives?" They never found a way to rid themselves of the box. And every Valentine's Day, the melody grew louder, echoing through their home like a sinister serenade, a chilling reminder that some gifts come with a price. The small town of Hawthorne Falls was picturesque, with its cobblestone streets, ivy-clad buildings, and quaint traditions. Among them, Valentine's Day stood out as the most celebrated holiday of the year. Couples flocked to the town square to exchange gifts, declare their love, and participate in the Midnight Pledge, where lovers promised eternal devotion beneath the old clock tower. But Hawthorne Falls had a dark secret. A curse whispered about in hushed tones, but dismissed as folklore. Every Valentine's Day, new lovers face the shadow of the curse, the older residents would warn. Yet no one could quite remember how it had started, or what exactly it entailed. Sophie and Daniel, newcomers to the town, dismissed the warnings as superstition. They had moved to Hawthorne Falls seeking a fresh start, and Valentine's Day marked their first celebration as a couple. Sophie, a painter, was enchanted by the town's charm, while Daniel, a history professor, found its legends intriguing. That evening, they joined the bustling crowd in the square. Laughter filled the air, lanterns cast a warm glow, and the aroma of freshly baked pastries wafted through the chilly night. As the clock neared midnight, Sophie and Daniel approached the clock tower, hand in hand, eager to partake in the midnight pledge. Do you, under the light of love and the promise of eternity, vow to cherish one another? The town's mayor intoned, his voice carrying over the crowd. Sophie and Daniel smiled at each other and echoed the pledge, their voices intertwining with the others. But as the clock struck 12, a sudden chill swept through the square, extinguishing the lanterns and plunging the crowd into darkness. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd, and then silence. Sophie clung to Daniel as an eerie, unearthly light flickered from the clock tower. In the faint glow, she noticed something strange. Their shadows on the cobblestones below didn't match their movements. They swayed, elongated, and seemed to move of their own accord, almost as if they were alive. Daniel, Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. Something's wrong. Before he could respond, the bell tolled, its deep, mournful chime reverberating through the square. With each strike, Sophie felt a growing unease, as though an invisible thread was tightening around her heart. The crowd around them began to shift, their joyous expressions contorting into fear. Suddenly, a voice, a whisper, yet deafening, echoed through the square.
New lovers, you have made the pledge, and now you bear the weight of the curse.
Panic erupted. Couples began fleeing in all directions, but no matter where they ran, the eerie light from the clock tower seemed to follow them, their shadows twisting grotesquely on the walls and ground. Sophie and Daniel sprinted down a narrow alley, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding. "What's happening?" Sophie cried. Daniel's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the town's history. The curse. It must be connected to the Midnight Pledge. It's like we've bound ourselves to something. They stumbled into an abandoned church on the outskirts of town, hoping to find sanctuary. Inside, the air was heavy, the silence oppressive. Sophie lit a candle and noticed carvings on the walls, symbols of broken hearts and fragmented lovers etched deep into the stone. "It's a warning," Daniel muttered, tracing the carvings with his fingers. The curse targets new love, turning devotion into destruction. As if in response to his words, the shadows in the room began to ripple and coalesce. From the darkness emerged spectral figures, couples, their faces etched with anguish, their forms barely tethered to this world. They reached out, their hollow eyes fixed on Sophie and Daniel. "Are you pledged what cannot be kept?" one of the apparitions hissed. "Love is fleeting, the curse ensures you will understand its price." Sophie and Daniel backed away, but the spirits advanced, their touch icy and suffocating. Desperate, Sophie recalled the mayor's words. "Under the light of love and the promise of eternity." "What if we break the pledge?" she said, her voice shaking. "If the curse binds us through love, maybe we can end it by letting go." Daniel hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. "You mean we renounce our love?" Tears filled Sophie's eyes. "I don't know what else to do. If it means saving us, I'll do it." Together they faced the apparitions and with heavy hearts declared,
We release each other from the pledge. We break the promise of eternity.
For a moment, the air seemed to still. The apparitions paused, their forms flickering. Then, one by one, they dissipated, leaving only an eerie silence in their wake. The next morning, the town square was as lively as ever, the curse seemingly forgotten by all but Sophie and Daniel. They walked away from the clock tower, their hands apart, the weight of their broken promise heavy in their hearts. Though they had survived, they knew their love would never be the same. And every Valentine's Day, they avoided the square, haunted by the memory of the night they made the pledge, and the curse that almost consumed them.
Love is powerful, but as we've seen tonight, it can also be haunting, tragic, and even cursed. These stories remind us that love is not just about passion and devotion. It's also about the unknown, the sacrifices, and sometimes the ghosts it leaves behind. Which of these chilling tales resonated with you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of love, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because every love story deserves to be told, even the ones that never truly end. Happy Valentine's Day, and may your love never fade into the shadows.